Hello everyone, and welcome back to Pokepaint, the series where I draw new Fakemon for my hypothetical Pokemon region based on the US and British Virgin Islands Trapore. Last time on Pokepaint, we did our first of my ancient form fossil Pokemon, and today we're going to wrap up our designs with two more evolutionary lines. In the last video, I talked about the concept behind the idea quite a bit, but I left out what inspired me initially. I haven't been able to find it as of time of recording, but back before the release of Pokemon Legends Arceus, I saw this fake leak of some alternative living designs of fossil Pokemon that would roam Hisui as the original non-extinct species. Now, of course it was a fake leak, but I thought it was a really cool idea. And I told myself if the Pokemon Company didn't do something like this, I would. So, here we are. Like I said last time, the island where you would be able to catch these ancient form Pokemon is the commercialized Paleo Park. Across the island there would be a diverse set of biomes, like an open grassy area, a jungle area, wetlands, a desert, a volcanic mountain, and a central shallow canal that cuts down the middle of the island. And of course, the number of Pokemon here is not limited to the ancient variety, as in addition to the Pokemon from last video, you'll be able to find Spinarak, Heracross, Carnivine, Minior, Shuckle, Torkoal, Heatmor, Durant, Lairon, Gligar, Drapion, Relicanth, Golisopod, Gastrodon, and Lapras. And, of course, our two newest Troporian Pokemon. For the final two lines of my ancient form fossil Pokemon run, I chose to cover the Amaura Auroros line and the Tyrunt Tyrantrum line. Both because they're more traditionally dinosaur-y than many of the other fossil Pokemon, and also because I had a cool idea to make these designs inspire each other in a way that paired Pokemon should. In designing Amaura, I reused an older concept that I had already done in merging this herbivorous animal with that which it's thought to have eaten, the leaves off of trees. Those of you who've been watching the channel for a little while will maybe remember that I used this concept for my first Pokemon region, Coloniar. However, I don't feel bad reusing concepts from Season 1, as I plan to revisit Coloniar in the future and redo a lot of it. For this version of Amaura, I figured that its original ice typing might have come from the fact that its remains maybe lasted through an ice age, and therefore the ice type was somehow imparted into the fossil. Does that make any sense? I don't know. Does it go against canon? Maybe. It was pointed out in the comment section last time that my version of Aerodactyl actually does break canon, as the Pokedex says that Mega Aerodactyl is the true original form. And I say to that, yeah, you're probably right. I didn't really look super far into it, but I feel perfectly fine keeping this as one. I don't feel super adherent to the fine details of the Pokemon canon for a conceptual series like this, and two, the whole concept of this redesign is what scientists got wrong in their assumptions of prehistoric animals, similarly to what the Gen 8 fossils did. So, I feel like though it may be a bit of a stretch, I think everything here could still semi-fit into the lore of the main series. Anyways, I keep getting sidetracked. I wanted to give this line a visual tie to modern living Pokemon that it appears to be related to, like Tropius and the Chikorita line. So I added little details like the spotted fruit that maybe resembles a proto-version of the bananas on Tropius's chin, and let both Tropius and Chikorita influence the color palette of this version of Amaura. Amaura, the Palm Pokemon. It is now believed that the Ice-type Amaura of the modern day may have entirely lost their original typing through the fossilization process. Imprints in its skin and head crests show a high resemblance to living Pokemon like Tropius and Meganium. Paying support to that theory are the Amaura living in Trapore that are thought to share a far closer resemblance to their ancestors than their resurrected counterparts do. As you may have been able to see with my design of Amaura, this design would be colored in such a way as to not only resemble their Brachiosaur inspirations, but to also resemble a palm tree, in the way that the two tower above the other organisms in their ecosphere. Most regional forms use the pose out of their original Pokemon's official art as to illustrate the relation to one another. That is something that I try to replicate whenever I do a regional form, which functionally is what these ancient Pokemon are, a regional form from a different time. Even though I do it with every other Fossilmon in these videos, Auroros's original pose is just a bit too bland. It's side-on, showing no real personality, and most importantly, it fails to illustrate the true scale of what a Brachiosaur Pokemon should look like. So I changed up the pose, or more accurately, the perspective, as to show this Pokemon from what would most likely be the most common way to view it from low down. I feel like giving it this perspective illustrates way better the hugeness of this Pokemon. Some may say it looks too different, as I changed way more than a regional form usually does. However, I'm really happy with how it turned out. One of my favorite details was the coconut that I placed right in the middle of its palm, as not only is that approximately where coconuts are supposed to grow from, but its protuberance looks similar to how many depictions of Brachiosaur heads do, with the nostrils raised up above the eyes and mouth in its sort of skull dome. I also gave it the dual typing of Grass Fairy, as this would balance it perfectly against its counterpart's new typing, which I think is a neat touch. Auroros, the towering Pokemon, the evolved form of Amaura. These Pokemon can be seen in the modern day towering above all other Pokemon on the land. It is seen that they are bitter enemies with Tyrantrum. They shield their young from them in giant herds that resemble moving forests from afar. In adaptation against their bitter foes, they have developed an iron-hard carapace that grows from their skin and resembles the bark of trees. In tackling the Amaura Auroros line first, my version of the Tyrunt line will probably make more sense. In order to continue the idea that these two are counterparts, I wanted to bring that more heavily into lore by letting each design influence the other. Where Amaura is a tree, Tyrunt and its evolution would be axes of sorts. Now, of course, not literally, but they would have adaptations to penetrate that thick armor that their enemies have, that would, appear like axes, as they have a similar function. So Tyrunt gains a head crest / set of front teeth that heavily resemble the blades of an axe. I also swapped the color palettes of the evolved and pre-evolved forms. The main reason I did this is to resemble the change in how we view our own accuracy of our common depictions of these dinosaurs. Let me explain. Back in the 90s, in the same time that the Jurassic Park movies were coming out, the depictions of the dinosaurs in that movie were actually seen as relatively accurate. That was until the late 2000s and early 2010s, when it was discovered that T-Rexes may have had feathers, or at least downy proto-feathers, like birds, as there was evidence of that being possible in the fossil record. So we yet again see a change in how pop culture depicts them when the Pokémon Company gives their T-Rex Pokémon a downy fluff on their necks. This of course also resembles the collar of a royal cloak, but a good design feature can serve multiple functions. Our ideas on how T-Rexes actually looked, however, have changed in many scientists' eyes in recent years. I believe as early as 2018, it has been theorized that T-Rexes had no feathers, that they were actually scaly, like originally imagined. That is, T-Rex adults are thought to be largely featherless, but their young may have had a coat of downy proto-feathers that they shed whilst they mature. So, As pop culture changes to depict these extinct animals in a more accurate light, so too do I let that knowledge influence my own Pokemon designs. Tyrunt, the Royal Air Pokemon. These playful young Pokemon are full of energy, capable of reaching high speeds with their powerful back legs. Imprints in the fossilized remains of these Pokemon's skin were originally thought to be feathers, but with the recent discovery of their living relatives in Trapor, they are now known to be a fluffy metallic fiber that sheds partially in layers as they evolve. This sheddable overcoat is incredibly soft, but the tough undercoat that isn't shed eventually hardens into a blade-like protuberance. Finally, I came to Tyrunt, who was at first a little trickier to redesign, as there wasn't really that much I realistically wanted to change. Like I said before, with the lack of feathers in adult T-Rexes, I ended up representing that with a bladed axe in place of the feathery crest. And so too did I change the crown on its head, by lengthening them out into several dangerous-looking blades. I also, of course, muted its color palette to contrast with the original, while also hinting at the true change in its biology in its adult form, as in reality dinosaurs were just animals, and as so grew and changed with chemical and biological markers that are just like any other animal. So these changes would be seen in their color and their form, as they weren't just some bloodthirsty movie monster, as it's so easy to depict them that way. So I think my design combines the best of both worlds, in the truly monstrousness of it in its bladed armor, but also with the almost sci-fi touch of realism that true Pokemon designs often utilize. And yes, the axe inspiration may make way less sense than the other ancient form Pokemon that I've done, but have you considered the fact that a T-Rex made out of axes is really cool? Tyrunt, the Despot Pokemon. These towering monsters may appear to be dangerous at first glance, but are often more docile than what is often thought. They live in small groups, shielding their young from their massive enemies, the Auroros. That being said, their reputation is not without merit, as its powerful jaws and metallic crests make terrifying weapons in their war against their bitter enemies. So, that wraps up our fossil Pokemon. Well, that is our replacement for fossil Pokemon in Trapor. Would you like to have seen some real fossils, or do you much prefer these altered ancient forms? Let me know in the comments below. Also, let me know if any of these 5 ancient form Pokemon are good enough to have made it onto any of your teams. As you can probably tell by looking at the Pokedex page, we're almost done with the series. Yes, we undoubtedly have a good chunk of episodes left. However, besides for the final pseudo-legendary, a few Christmas-themed regional forms, a few redesigns that I want to get to, and the legendary Pokemon, we're really at the home stretch. It'll be a few more episodes from now, but I wanted to ask you all this sooner than later, as I'd like some time to consider every idea. I'm planning to create some Mega Evolutions towards the end of the series, both for my own Pokemon and for a handful of main series pre-existing ones. It's definitely my favorite gimmick that's been introduced so far, and I would like to bring it into the Trapor region. So tell me, what Pokemon, mine or main series, would you like to see as a Mega form? I have 1 or 2 ideas of my own, but I'd love to add to that list with some of your ideas. Besides that, that'll do it for now, so as always, if you enjoyed this video and want to see more like it, then subscribe, and turn on the bell to get notified when I upload next.